Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Franchise Euphoria. Josh Brown here. Today's episode is brought to you by Franchise 5. Why Franchise 5? I'm glad you asked. Growing your franchise in a slow, deliberate, and thoughtful manner is a smart way to grow. Franchise 5 helps you do this by expanding 5 locations at a time with a Zen-like focus on the geographic locations that make sense for your growth. To learn more about this, go to franchiseeuphoria.com/franchise5. That's the number 5. So franchiseeuphoria.com/franchise5. Now to today's episode. Hey, Josh Brown here. Welcome back to another episode of Franchise Euphoria. Thrilled to bring you another fascinating, great interview today. Hopefully you'll think the same. I'm thrilled to have on Christian Hageseth. And Christian is the founder and CEO of a company called ONE Cannabis. He has over 8 years of experience in the Colorado legal cannabis industry and over 20 years of experience as an entrepreneur. In 2009, Christian founded Green Man Cannabis, and by 2016 had 4 retail dispensary locations and 2 grow operations in Colorado, along with documenting his experience in his book, Big Weed, published by Macmillan in 2015, which kind of goes through his story. While operating Green Man, Christian recognized the next step in the evolution of the retail dispensary experience, a cannabis brand that was for every consumer, along with a chance for other entrepreneurs to use this brand and his expertise. So in 2017, he formed ONE Cannabis as the brand in retail cannabis. ONE Cannabis franchise provides entrepreneurs a proven business model, award-winning products and management, and an established brand in the marketplace. So Christian, obviously by way of that introduction, is in a controversial business. And regardless of what you think about the business, I think one thing that you'll appreciate, or you should appreciate about this interview, is that he's a serious entrepreneur. And this is a serious and significant business and business model. And yet, through the course of operating this business and growing this business, he's had unique challenges that not every business has faced, one of which is the banking industry. I mean, just the simple idea of a business not being able to utilize regular banking facilities when you're in the cannabis business is a significant challenge to try to overcome. So we discussed that and many other things in this interview. Without further ado, please enjoy this conversation with Christian Hageseth. Hello, Christian. Welcome to Franchise Euphoria. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Well, I'm excited to have you. This is a very unique episode, and it's a unique concept. And we're talking about the cannabis franchise concept. And of course, your business, ONE Cannabis. I mean, obviously, this is a hot topic, across our country. And but before we dive into all those details, which we will, tell me a little bit about yourself and how you got into this business, maybe what you did beforehand and what led you to the franchise cannabis model.
Yeah, sure. I'm a lifelong entrepreneur. What I mean by that is I sort of had entrepreneurial tendencies before I got out of college. But then upon graduation, I moved from Arizona up to Seattle, Washington, and started an ice cream company up there. I did something a lot like Cold Stone. And but at the time in Seattle, they thought that we had made up the whole concept. And so we quickly grew that to 3 units and a little manufacturing facility and then sold it all off. And then I got into technology. I worked in tech for about 3 years in Seattle and was later moved to Denver. And really enjoyed that. Loved what was going on in tech. And I was in tech until 2001, until September 11th, 2001. And then the company I was working for was shut down. And so I was an entrepreneur looking for something to do. And so I ended up starting a mortgage bank with a guy I knew pretty well. And together we started the mortgage bank, and then we did a roll up of mortgage brokerages around the U.S. And I did that. I worked in real estate and finance through that intro through 2008. And then in 2008, I was once again an entrepreneur looking for something to do. So I have stared in the eye of 2 bubbles bursting in the United States, first technology and then real estate, and lived through it. So I'm proof that they don't.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Proof that that doesn't actually kill you, even though it feels like it will. And then in 2009, when I was still just done recovering from the implosion of '08, I was invited to play golf with my good friend and attorney, and one of the other guys in our foursome was about to open a dispensary. And I was just, spent the next 18 holes riding around the golf cart with this guy, just, really my mind just being blown by the possibilities of what it would mean to have legal marijuana being sold in stores. And decided shortly after that round, a few weeks later, that I was going to apply myself to the legal marijuana business in the United States. And that was 2009. So about 9.5 years ago. And actually, right when I got in, one of the first things I recognized with this would be a great opportunity for a franchise. The cannabis space is a $50 billion industry in the United States in the black market. And so as we mainstream that and regulate it, it seems like it would be a great opportunity. But I also realized at the time that no one really had enough experience to become a franchisor. If you're a franchisor, you have to have learned from your experience and have something to pass on of value. And so we just got really busy on operating, and we became very good operators for the next 8 years. And we won 6 cannabis cups, which is the highest award for product excellence in the industry. And last year, High Times Magazine named us one of the best dispensaries in the United States. And we really focused on running compliant and profitable business. And so about a year and a half ago now started the franchise part of the business. And since we've sold 8 units in 3 states.
Which states?
Colorado, Michigan, and Ohio. But yeah, so that's what led me to all this. Again, I was a lifelong entrepreneur, and cannabis was just, it basically opened up as a legitimate business while I was in the middle of my professional life, and seemed like a great opportunity, one that I was somewhat aligned with socially. I had been a recreational user of cannabis occasionally in college. Never a big deal. Some of the industry was dominated for a short period by people that were growers looking to go legit, or dealers trying to go legal. And I was never one of those guys. I was always a businessman and a student, and just thought cannabis was an interesting aside in society.
Well, so back in 2009, though, when did Colorado legalize that?
So Colorado actually legalized in 1999. So 10
Wow,
years.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah. So California was the first in 96. Colorado was second in 99. But it was really until 2009 that the industry took off, when the Colorado Department of Public Health and the Environment passed a rule effectively that said a caregiver growing medical marijuana could grow for more than 5 patients. And the result of that decision was that a bunch of guys like me went out and rented warehouses and storefronts, and we started growing on a commercial level and selling via dispensaries. And so that's what happened in 2009. That was the decision that really brought me into the industry.
Well, the thing that's fascinating to me and interesting is, there's a perception out there for people who don't know better that, you start a dispensary and it's just like, a bunch of stone guys in a room just thinking they're going to go start up a weed business. But these are really sophisticated businesses. And it's interesting because obviously more and more states are legalizing it in a variety of capacities. You still don't have on the federal side where it's legalized. So you got to deal with those challenges. And I remember, and I don't know if this is still a challenge, but there used to be a significant issue with the fact that you couldn't get a bank where you could basically bank for your business. Is that still a challenge?
It is. Oh my gosh. Is it, been kicked out of 10
Because you
banks?
came from that. That's what's fascinating.
Yeah.
Is like you came to a background in the mortgage banking industry. And so I wonder if you had figured out a way around that.
I didn't. And because I worked in mortgage banking for a while, I have a lot of friends in the banking world. And even one of my good friends has now kicked me out of 2 banks. He was the president of one bank when we first got started, and it was really early on, '09. And after about 6 months, he said, "Hey, man, I just can't take your account anymore. I'm sure you understand." And I did.
Well, explain that to people, because you and I understand this, but explain it to the listener as to what the issue is with the banking system and the marijuana business.
Yeah, so marijuana has a few problems, and they all really stem from the fact that it's still federally illegal. And because of the federal illegality, typically banks won't touch our money. And the reason they won't is that banks and any depository, credit unions and banks, are required to carry insurance on their deposits, either FDIC or NCUA insurance. And the terms of those policies, not surprisingly, says that the bank has to follow all state and federal laws in order to comply with the terms of the insurance. And if they don't follow all state and federal laws, then they can't be insured. And if you're a bank that can't be insured by FDIC or NCUA, you can't be a depository. You can't take money. And so, because cannabis is federally illegal and that these insurance programs for depositories require that depositories are insured, that any bank that's taking money from cannabis, which is federally illegal, is in violation of their insurance. And so that's the core of it. And it's similar also marijuana has a tax problem for similar reasons, because the sale and transportation of marijuana is illegal. The expenses associated with selling marijuana are not deductible. So it's the same problem, the root of the problem being the federal illegality, and the manifestation being either that banks don't want our money or that the IRS won't let us deduct certain expenses. So it makes operating the business difficult from a banking side and much more expensive from an IRS tax side.
So how do you get around that? I mean, what do you do?
There's again, about 10 years into this industry, there's a host of entrepreneurial banks that are very interested in, trying to bank this business. ArcView has suggested that cannabis will be a $47 billion industry in the United States by 2027. So there's a lot of banking dollars that are very valuable there. And so there's some entrepreneurial banks that have been out there trying to figure out how to bank this money. We've been working with one of them for about 3 years now, very successfully. And
are they insured?
They are, but they're also they're a small credit union that has gone to extreme lengths to make sure that they comply with what was called the Cole Memo, which was something written during the Obama administration that gave guidance to the Department of Treasury about how to interface with cannabis businesses, and so they haven't lost their insurance.
Is it still largely a cash business? Or, I mean, because I can imagine people are using credit cards and stuff like that, but are you even able to?
It is largely cash. The majority of our sales, we have an ATM in our lobby, and the majority of those are people grabbing, cash out of the ATM and then coming into the store to complete their transaction. There are a couple of payment processors that have opened up, but typically what they look like is, instead of just taking a credit card like you would in the normal transaction, you buy a gift card for, say, $100, and then you use that $100 gift card to settle a transaction for $97. And so you'll literally buy a gift card for $100, you'll settle the transaction for $97, and they'll give you $3 back in cash, for change. And so there are some of that going on, but it's always, it's not the usual course of business. Those people are they're complicit in sort of sidestepping the federal illegality as well, which means that those people helping us to transact business via credit cards are also taking a significant risk themselves by doing that.
So for those that don't really have an appreciation or understanding of the dispensary business, can you walk through what it is you do, and then we'll tie that into turning it into a franchise?
Yeah. So we're a fully vertically integrated marijuana company. And so we cultivate marijuana, we grow it, we process it and sell it. And processing is doing, extracting the good stuff from the plant and then making it available in edibles or vaporizers or concentrates. And then finally we retail it. And so we have a lot of expertise about running compliantly, which is most important, and profitably, which is second important to compliance. But we're very good at running compliant and profitable, fully vertically integrated marijuana businesses. So we do it all.
Well, and so the model itself, because you've already hinted at this, obviously some of the challenges that you would have in the cannabis business that you wouldn't otherwise have in another business. I mean, obviously you're a veteran entrepreneur. And so, this has got to be the first business where you really had to think about a banking solution or other sort of logistics that serve as roadblocks for people to come in and actually purchase the product. Did you set this business up with the idea at the beginning that you would eventually want to franchise, or did that come later?
I always had an awareness that I thought franchising would be a great fit for this business. But candidly, while we were setting it up over the last last decade, Early on, all we were focused on was survival. What do we need to do to be compliant? What do we need to do to be profitable? And so there wasn't a lot of foresight at that point. It was really a focus on, just getting the fundamentals of this business down. Because, cannabis is no different than any other business. We still have to, you have to sell your product for more than you pay for it. You have to have a significant margin. You need to be able to, pay all of your employees and your rent and your taxes and pay for insurance and everything else. And then at the end of the day, there's got to be some money left over. And it was really just a couple of years ago where I was I was at a party, and a good friend of my wife was there, one of my wife's good friends, and her husband happens to be a franchise guy. And he and I started talking about it. And it was from that conversation that the idea of franchising the business really started to take root again. Again, I initially had some thoughts when I started the business that this would be great to be franchised. But it was only after about 8 years of doing it that I started looking around and said, you know what? Like, we really do know a lot now. We've answered a lot of these questions. We have some good standard operating procedures. We know what doesn't work, which is critical in knowing what works. And we really believe we could add value to potential owner operators that might want to be franchisees. And so it really didn't start looking. We didn't really start looking at the properly putting a franchise together until we had been doing this about 8 years, which I think is reasonable when you think about really what we're providing to our partners is our expertise and our experience. And a team of people working at something for 8 years is probably enough to qualify for having substantial experience.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, so what's the physical layout? I mean, I got to imagine you have some sort of greenhouse
Mm-hmm.
type facility there, then maybe more of a retail type operation. Is that what your franchise? I mean, is that what a franchisee is getting, or is it more the know-how and then you're dispensing it to them, but they have maybe smaller retail locations, or what's the model that you guys are doing?
Yeah, so we have very large cultivation facilities, and they're really expensive. And so we've got a couple people that are interested in franchising with us now, and potentially in New Jersey and Michigan, where they will actually be franchising the cultivation side. And then, but what we look like is we have 118,000 feet of indoor cultivation facility, and then we're about to move into another 90,000 foot greenhouse. And indoor is actually like a warehouse where we have all the lights inside and a closed roof, traditional warehouse type setup. And then a greenhouse is typically steel walls with a translucent roof that lets the sunshine in. We're here in Colorado, and we're blessed by 300 days of sunshine a year. So we get a significant benefit from growing in greenhouses here. It's a lot less expensive. And so we've got significant cultivation, and then we also have at retail. Our retail units are between 1,400 and 2,800 square feet. They're either in strip malls or standalone buildings, and our franchisees, they are owner operators of those retail units. And so we help them to identify the real estate and do the interior design and layout, order all the millwork, get all the signage in, and train them on all the standard operating procedures that they're going to need to run a business, in particular a marijuana business. If they're in a state that we don't have cultivation, then we help curate and make sure that they're buying the right product for the right price and putting it on their shelves in nice packaging. And if they're in Colorado, then we go ahead and we provide that directly to them. But even though we have large cultivation facilities in Colorado, we cannot, no product ever crosses state lines. And so we're not using our Colorado cultivation facility to provide product to Ohio or Michigan. That's just clearly not allowed. So that's what we're set up to do. And so we can, we're in conversations around the country, actually around the world right now, on different models of helping franchisees. Most of our franchisees are focused on the retail side. So that's where most of the money is made. Some of them are really interested in getting in on the cultivation side, and we're working with a few on that level as well.
Well, it seems like, I mean, depending on the state that you're in, it seems like you're going to have to focus on the cultivation side, because you can't, if you're going to have a problem bringing it across state lines, you're going to have those cultivation facilities in those operable states, right?
Yeah, the difference is so California is going to have a huge number of cultivation facilities. And so in California, for example, it's going to be a lot easier for us. And we're about to enter California with a very aggressive campaign in the new year.
How's that registration process been?
That is brutal.
I'm laughing because I know. I mean, I can only imagine how challenging it is to get this franchise registered in
Well,
California.
I mean, you can more than most, but but it's like registering in California anyway. And then you throw in cannabis on top of it, and it's like it seems like they handed out rubber stamps with the word "no" to every department in California.
Did you get it through though?
No, that's why I said we're posting for the push in Q1 as we're still trying to work it out, and we believe obviously we'll get it done, but no, it's not done yet, and it's challenging. And for good reason. It's challenging too. I got to say is, I don't feel ill will towards any of our regulators that have the hard questions and see real problems with franchising or operating cannabis businesses. We are changing the way that the world operates in this sense, and it's on us to be able to explain and demonstrate that we have a better model, an efficient model, that we're going to be good stewards to our communities, and we're not going to be lawbreakers, and that our partners, our franchisees, are going to be good actors as well.
I mean, it also helps your model too, because in this kind of business, it's so highly regulated. There's so many question marks, and when I say question marks, I mean, you're working through all those. And obviously you have found a way to make it work thus far. So that information is very valuable to somebody who wants to get into this business, but is looking at it and going, gosh, where do I even start? Well, you've been down that road now for the last 9 years in doing that. Now, you were starting to say about the cultivation facilities in California before I interrupted you, so sorry about that. So you guys are planning a whole bunch there
Well,
eventually.
our focus in California is really going to be on dispensaries, and particularly we're focusing on these social equity licenses. And but California has so much cultivation that we'll be able to white label. We'll be able to find cultivators there that have facilities, and we'll be able to get them our genetics and have them grow it our way and package it in our packaging, so that if a consumer were to
It's like a distributorship.
yeah, exactly. On the product side, it's like a distributorship. And so in that way, our franchises in California will have products that are similar to our franchises elsewhere where we cultivate it, but we're going to be able to use third parties to get that grown. In other states like New Jersey and Pennsylvania and Ohio, there's a very limited amount of cultivation licenses. And so in those states, we're looking to actively, either own our own cultivation or joint venture with somebody that has a cultivation intact, and so we can provide it to franchisees in those states.
So what kind of franchisees are you looking for? I mean, who's your ideal franchisee? If you had to say, okay, here's the person or people that we are looking to bring into this system.
You know what it looks like now, and it's funny how the world changes. If you had asked me that question, a year and a half ago before we started this process, I would have said one thing. But now what I see are the people who've been most successful with are they're multi-unit franchisees in another concept, or they've had a lot of business success, and so they're people that understand business at its core and aren't they're not looking to franchising as to get them over from 0 to 1. They're looking at the cannabis opportunity, and they know enough about business to realize that they're going to need some help with cannabis. And so it's those, and in Canada, we've had a lot of luck with the multi-unit franchisees out of other concepts, health clubs, real estate, restaurants, people that have done that. And so they really see the value in it. So those are sort of our.
And are these true? I mean, are these true owner operators, and that the franchisees who are buying the franchise, are they in there running it, or the idea that I got to imagine, especially with you saying you're trying to attract multi-unit operators, that they'll get it up and going and then have a management team in place to run it.
Exactly. It's the latter. These are people that don't mind rolling up their sleeves for a little while to get the business up and running, but they very quickly hire a team that comes in with them or just right after them and ends up running the business. These people are definitely working on their businesses, not in their businesses. And so they're making that investment to get out of it, because it's retail, and it's operating a retail business, and so there's a number of it's pretty easy to hire good retail managers. in this world.
So, what's been the most as we finish up here? I got a couple final questions for you. Thank you, by the way, for coming on. I think this is really informative. Certainly a unique concept, and certainly a budding concept. No pun intended. But but essentially, what has been one or two things, if you can think of, and I know I'm having you think on your feet here, that in terms of the franchise of this business that you wish you had known before you started franchising, or that maybe you didn't fully think about, for those out there that have their own businesses and they're thinking about franchising?
Well, I think I'm answering a slightly different question than the one you're asking, but what comes to mind is that now that we're franchising this, I look back and I wish I could have franchised this business. Quite literally, I've made millions and lost millions in the marijuana industry, and the franchise would have really helped me to avoid losing millions because there's a number of simple mistakes that you can make that are unique to cannabis, and I wish we had had that. I wish I'd had that insight. If I would able to pay a fee to get that insight and experience, oh my gosh, I'd be so much further ahead.
You wish like somebody else had done it and
Yeah.
you could have like
Oh
dovetailed
yeah.
along, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Listen, I would be happy to be somebody's largest multi-unit franchisee, right? Rather than the franchisor, because we learned a lot of hard mistakes along the way that have proven very valuable. And I think the other thing I'd say that I think is more answering your question is, what I wish we knew before we started franchising. I really look forward to adding the real estate component to the business quickly, because one of the biggest challenges in cannabis franchising is still getting the right location. And retail in cannabis is no different than retail in any other industry, and it's location, location, location. And so, having some capital to go after and buy that right location at the corner of Main and Main is a huge difference. You can get you get a magnitude of sales greater, maybe 3 or 4 times the number of sales, the amount of sales you can get in a subpar location. So, really putting a lot of priority on that retail location, because if you've got a great location to start with, it becomes really hard to screw the business up. And if you have
So would you guys be out there essentially buying the locations and then leasing them to the franchisees?
yeah, either buy it and lease it, or provide mortgage financing for the owner operator to own their location. But either way, getting capital engaged in the system to make sure that we have the best locations, because like in Colorado, we think there's going to be a huge amount of consolidation, and in that consolidation, my belief is that the remaining locations are going to be those locations that have, that they're great locations with, plenty of parking and, great signage and, nice retail environments. Those are the ones that are going to be the future successes of the industry.
So on the flip side of that question, what's been one of the best things about franchising this thus far?
I'm a very big team player. I did sort of everything about life. Like I believe in team. It's hard. I don't see people accomplishing very much on their own ever. You even find an athlete that has an individual event, and they're going to talk about their coaches and their trainers and the people that inspire them to keep going and do more. And so, but in business in particular, it's really team. And the thing I've loved, I love this part of franchising, is that, working with our franchisees, these people are as passionate or more passionate about their business as I am. And there's a lot of joy in working with other people who are just, fired up about what we're all working on. And, I'm getting texts this morning, that like, what was it, 4 a.m. my time. This was 6 a.m. in New Jersey. And these guys are texting me being, they're ready to roll. It's Monday morning and they're up early and they're excited, and they're sharing what they're doing with me and asking for feedback. And as an entrepreneur, to wake up and feel like you're surrounded now by this team of people that are all sort of pushing in the same direction, I love that. And so if we can continue to grow that franchise network, that family franchising around the country, and have a lot of people that are all contributing, collaborating to the same thing, like that gets me pretty fired up.
Well, you guys are definitely a trailblazer. I mean, this industry, you've won numerous awards, as you mentioned earlier, and received all sorts of accolades. And I think you even wrote a book, right, called Big Weed: An Entrepreneur's High Stakes Adventures in the Budding Legal Marijuana Business. How's that been for you?
It's been great. Yeah, it's done really well. I published it in 2015. Well, actually, St. Martin's Press, Macmillan published it. I wrote it, and it's sold really well, very, very well, and it's opened up a lot of doors. Actually, we're in negotiations right now to write a Big Weed 2, and sort of a follow-up. The Big Weed was about my first 5 years in the cannabis industry, and obviously I'm four plus years into the sort of second phase of that. But it's been great. It was a fun opportunity to share some of the insights and stories about what legal marijuana was like. And then it's one of the best, calling cards you could ever have. It's opened a lot of doors.
Well, thank you so much, Christian, for coming on. Obviously, CEO and founder of Denver-based franchisor ONE Cannabis. Thank you for coming on, sharing that. It sounds so interesting to me, this whole business, and then add another layer that you're actually franchising it, which I'm very interested in. So, if somebody's listening to this and wants to get a hold of you, what's the best either way to get a hold of you or to find out more information about the franchise business?
Probably best is to go to our website. It's ONE-cannabis.com, one-cannabis.com. Or for those people that still use the telephone, you can always reach us at 303-922-2122. So we would love to, we're expanding aggressively and would love to talk to more people about it.
Well, that sounds great. Well, thanks again. I mean, I look forward to staying in touch with you, at least following what you're doing and see how you continue to grow this thing. And thanks again for coming on Franchise Euphoria. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's truly my pleasure. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being with us today on the Franchise Euphoria podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to go to iTunes and provide a review. Also, please remember that although Josh Brown is a licensed and practicing attorney, nothing contained in this podcast should be construed as legal advice, because it is not. The information contained in this podcast is general and educational in nature, and none of it should be relied upon as legal advice. That being said, if you have questions for Josh and would like to contact him, please email him at josh@franchiseeuphoria.com. Thank you so much for listening, and we hope you tune in to our next weekly episode.